Jennifer Priest here with a fun video on how to do this scrapbook page. So it's a little bit elegant, a little bit shabby, and it's all stamped. So I have some stamps here from Something Tattered. These are vintage wallpaper stamps, so they're really cool. And I'm just going to stamp this a few times across the bottom of my page to give a nice border. And the ink that I'm using here is Color Box's Decades Antiquing ink that's released with Graphic 45. So these inks work really well with Graphic 45's products, and they give that great vintage color. Now this is another stamp set from Something Tattered, and again I'm just inking it up with that same Decades Antiquing ink pad. The color is, let me see, Venetian Lace. So really pretty color, and I'm just stamping these really fun little cakes here. So this stamp from Something Tattered has 3 different sizes of cakes on it, and I'm just stamping those across the top of the page. So I started with the largest stamp first, and then I'm going to go to the medium stamp and then the smallest stamp. And what I really liked about their stamps is they kind of have like a very vintage feel. A lot of them are based on real vintage images. So if you are into like that vintage look, Something Tattered is definitely a company for you to check out and see their stuff. And what I also like is if I do make a little bit of a mistake, like you can see that cake right there in the middle didn't come out so good. It just looks more distressed and vintage. So you can kind of get away with a little bit of imperfection on these kinds of scrapbook pages. So here I'm just doing those little cakes right across the top. You can do this with any stamp. What I liked though with this is that you have that same image in 3 different sizes, which I haven't really seen stamp companies do that before. So I thought this is really interesting, fun thing. So I just stamped the largest cake on some cream cardstock, punched out a circle, and then I used a similar punch to punch out a scalloped circle. And I'm going to use that Decades Antiquing ink to ink the edges. So this is a Color Box blender, and this is their tool. It's a really nice one-piece handle for inking the edges. You get a really soft look, especially with this antiquing ink. This ink is meant for inking the edges of things and getting that soft blended kind of tattered worn look. So if you're into that look, definitely check these out. So I'm just using some 3L scrapbook adhesive foam squares to kind of stack up and layer that circle die cut together, just to make it have a little bit of dimension and look a little bit fun and fancy. And I have some of this like burlappy type of trim, like a vintagey cream trim. This one's a little bit burlap, and then there's another one I'm going to layer on top that is kind of a vintagey cream color. And I'm just using hot glue to add that on because regular scrapbook adhesives don't seem to really want to hold on something this thick and heavy onto a scrapbook page. So hot glue works really, really well. Just be careful not to burn yourself. And I just put these across the middle there to cover that seam where the stamping meets up, and then trim the edges with my scissors. And then I'm going to add my layered circle die cut there with some more foam dots so that it has some more dimension and can kind of go over top of that lace. And what I did is I actually stacked 2 foam squares on top of each other so that it would give me that extra boost of dimension to go up and over that lace border that's there on the page. Now I have these embossed like little frames. They're from Heidi Swap, and I'm taking some pigment eyes ink. This is from Clear Snap. And I'm just rubbing that in. It's an acrylic pigment ink, and I'm rubbing it in with my finger, and then I'm spraying a little bit of smooch spritz, and the color is ginger ale, to kind of water it down and rub that in there. So I got 2 different kinds of sparkle going on that frame. And then I'm also using the eyes ink with my finger to color some satin leaves. So set that aside to dry. And here behind my little circle die cut, I put some blobs of eyes ink, a few drops, and then I'm using some water, just spraying that on there so I can get some drips and splatters. Because this page is about a coffee shop, I wanted it to look like coffee. So I also put some more drips here under the edge of that die cut, and I'm going to again add some water and create some splatters. So the colors of Eyes ink I'm using here are gold and opaline. So they have a really nice shimmer, and they behave like paint, watercolor, ink all in one. It's really cool. You can also use your Decades antiquing ink to antique the edges of photos. Here I'm antiquing a chipboard sticker that I had in my stash. And then once that little frame is dry, I just added him on there with a little bit of hot glue and then layered on my chipboard sticker as well. And then once those leaves were dry, I just added those in with a little bit of hot glue, kind of tucked behind the camera. And here's a fun technique if you are doing a coffee or drink page. I took a little bit of Eyes ink and some water and then spritzed it together. And I'm using the bottom of a mixed media inks ink pad because it's a circle to make little like coffee cup rings on my page. So I added a photo here that I matted, and then I'm using some foam letters to make my title, and then to antique those up a little bit because they are just a solid like cream color. I'm going to use the Decades antiquing ink right on top, just using that color box blender tool there to put a little ink on there. And then some mini stickers, and that's it. A really fun, easy layout with lots of different techniques and totally stamped, not a single piece of pattern paper. Thanks for joining me. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.